I'd like to show a video that sort of, as best as I can, captures the investigations and discussions I've had with one of the students in our class regarding a possible potential topic for a story map. There's a organization near Hilton, which is sort of near here, called Braddock Bay Raptor Research, which is devoted to observing and learning about migratory raptors, birds of prey. And there's also in our area a related organization called Wild Wings, which is a wildlife rehabilitation center with a specialty in raptors. So our area is quite rich with people and interest and knowledge about raptors and migratory birds in general. But there's really a limited amount of mapping about these things and map products that could contribute to this effort and educational endeavors of both Wild Wings and especially Braddock Bay Raptor Research. So what might we do in order to begin to develop a map product, something, or a web map product for that matter, of course, that could contribute to all of the wonderful, hardworking, dedicated people who are interested in learning about and teaching about these birds of prey. So let's see what information is available. One of the first things that one wants to do for a story map, actually the first two things to do, one is to decide on the story that is to be told. And that's pretty clear for somebody who's interested in this, and that is the fact that many of these raptors migrate over very large distances, back and forth from northern climates to southern climates as the seasons change, and that migration brings them in contact with people and environments over a very broad range. And so it's interesting too, and that automatically sounds like a spatial or mapping problem. So one of the first things we do then, after we decide on a story, I should say, is to begin to look for a data set that will be useful for this task, assuming that we're not expert enough or time rich enough to be creating our own data sets. So one good place to look, and this is a story of finding data which is relevant to GIS in general. Most agencies and organizations do have what are called geospatial services, or a GIS data warehouse or clearinghouse or something, and these are relatively easily found by doing a Google search. And the type of search that I would recommend always includes the words GIS data download, and if you start with that and then list a topic, the Google is very, very helpful in getting us to that. So we could say bookstores, because I have a flyer just stuck to my wall and it's the first thing I saw. So here's a variety of data sources. Maybe they're not the best match for this one here, but it has this, wonder how bookstores ended up to get to wet links or wetland links. That's interesting. But mostly a data search would lead us to a very good source, and in the case of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, I did GIS data download raptors, which is how I found this same site that I'd already loaded to show you. So there are several ways. It's more of an art to a great degree, and an investigative technique to find data sets than an actual specific procedure. But loading up GIS data downloads is a useful technique. And here at the the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we see that they have their own collection of data. They also point us to a data set called geo.data.gov, which endeavors to be a complete collection of all government data that's available of every sort, including spatial, and National Wetlands Inventory and several others. The whole topic of getting data is practically worth a course in itself. But anyway, we've arrived at an appropriate data set or data site, and from this site, I was able to get a spatial data format data set in our old, friendly, familiar KML format, which is a web GIS supporting format. And at this moment, I was fairly excited about the possibilities of. And another thing about data is it's a 2 megabyte data set, so I was enthusiastic about it containing actual meaningful data. But when I clicked on it and when I clicked on it and asked it to open it with Google Earth instead of my Notepad editor, which that connection to Notepad editing was left over from my previous lesson, but I right-click on it, ask for it to open. I right-click on the data set, open with, and force it to open inside of Google Earth so that it actually is executed rather than made available for editing. I'll see something in a couple seconds that actually turned out to be really one of the more disappointing things ever. This is what the data set looks like. And it's on its way to. So the data set for migratory bird flyways is limited to is entirely limited to 4 regions of the United States, each one identified as the Atlantic, the Mississippi, the Central, and I assume the Western or Pacific. So my total payoff for finding this data set was to see that the United States is broken up into 4 regions, and that hasn't really told me anything scientific or anything about the birds themselves or what they do. Quite a disappointment. So with that information, I move onward. Yeah, once again, it just tells me that each of these dots are also just identified as various flyways. So a big disappointment. I thought momentarily maybe that if I went to a more traditional GIS format, a non-web based one, and did a conversion, I might do better. And so here is another version of waterfowl flyways, which is the best I could find for migratory birds. And we discover that there's a fairly large shapefile, and another worrisome thing is that the attribute table, which is stored in a DBF, is quite limited in size, 1 kilobyte. So I should have been worried at this point, but I loaded that data set anyway. I downloaded that data set anyway. I actually then am now going to try and find it and load it up again using my standard desktop version. And lo and behold, my entire data set comprises just the 4 flyways once again, using my identify tool to find out what these things are listed as: the Atlantic flyway, the Mississippi, the Central, and the Pacific, which includes a third of the whole United States plus Alaska. So a tremendous disappointment. So I will continue with a more, I've reached my 12-minute limit on this one, and I'll continue with a more revealing or useful bunch of mapping and information in the next video.